Ahoy, fellow travelers through the stormy seas of the mind and heart. Welcome to the Pirate Therapist, where we navigate the wild waters of emotion and what it means to be human, without maps, but with plenty of compassion and a good sea shanty or two if we're lucky. I'm your host. I'm Lee Perry, and I'm thrilled that you've dropped anchor here with us today. So let's talk about today. Today has an ominous feel to it, as it does twice a year. Today is the day of daylight savings. That affects most of us, sometimes in a good way, sometimes not. But we're going to talk about sleep today. So, today, at this seasonal time known as daylight savings, I want to talk about something that sounds perhaps a little boring on paper, but feels absolutely brutal in real life, and that's sleep. Not the Instagram version where that have white linens and perfect nightstands, but the real version. Lying in the dark when you're exhausted and wired, and you're sitting there and you're scrolling through your phone, while some part of you whispers, "You're going to hate yourself in the morning for this." But another part whispers back, "I know, but I can't stop." The nights where your body is begging to shut down and your brain is pacing the deck, insisting it just has one more thing to think about, one more thing to fix. Or maybe it's afraid of something and it just wants to sit there and dwell on that. Well, in therapy language, we talk about emotional regulation and distress tolerance like tools that you can reach for at any moment, but there's a hidden truth there. Those tools live in the brain that's had a chance to rest and reset. When you're running on 4 or 5 fractured hours, your alarm system is louder and your wise mind is groggier. And the skills that you know have suddenly taken on a feeling of being very far away. It's not just because it's not because you're failing therapy, it's because you're trying to do kind of a delicate emotional surgery while your hands are shaking and you're in the dark. So, in this episode, we're going to sail into the night shift of your nervous system. We're going to talk about what your brain is actually doing while you sleep and why so many of us fight the very thing we need most. How sometimes our attachment patterns can show up at bedtime just as loudly as they do in our relationships during the day. And then we'll explore some tiny, doable experiments, not perfectionistic 8 hours or bust kind of plan, but small ways to give your overworked inner librarian a chance to lock the doors and clean up the mess before tomorrow. So if you're listening to this while you're already in bed, this one is for you. If you're half tempted to stay up and finish the episode instead of turning out the light, this one is especially for you. Sleep is one of the main ways that our nervous system reboots. And after a day of stress or stimulation or an emotional day, all day our threat system is scanning and our brain is asking, is this safe? Am I okay? It uses hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to keep you alert and reactive. Every email, every argument, every traffic jam, every doom scroll, every interaction you have throughout the day, it adds a little bit to the load on your brain. Now, you can cope in the moment with skills, but the baseline of your nervous system, how jumpy or grounded you are, it gets reset mostly and if most effectively while you sleep. So, what does sleep do for your brain and your body? During good enough sleep, your nervous system gets to do jobs it can't finish while you're awake. It can downshift your stress chemistry, cortisol and adrenaline drop, your heart rate and blood pressure settle down. It's like taking your nervous system out of combat mode and it puts it back into a more neutral state. In REM sleep or deep sleep, the brain replays emotional experiences and then files them away. That's part of why things feel a bit less raw after you get a good night's sleep. And they feel much sharper when you've been sleep deprived. Our brains can reset our impulse control. The prefrontal cortex, that's the part that does planning and judgment and social appropriate behaviors. It's where all of this gets restored. With poor sleep, you're more reactive and less patient, and the skills like distress tolerance and the wise mind are harder to access. So, sleep can affect how you feel physical pain and internal sensations. Less sleep equals more pain sensitivity, and more like everything feels like it's too much. And this feeds into an emotional feeling of being overwhelmed. When you don't get enough sleep, You get kind of a chronic, short, or fragmented sleep. It doesn't just make you tired, it shifts your baseline state. You start the day closer to a red zone instead of green. Your small stressors can feel huge and you snap, you get irritable, or maybe you just shut down faster. Old attachment patterns like clinging or avoiding or doing the push me, pull you kind of thing, they flare more easily because your system is already on the edge. In other words, without sleep, you're asking your nervous system to run a marathon every day without ever changing shoes or catching its breath. So, the reset button, let's look at it like this: sleep is the time when your body says, okay, hand me the wheel. I need to clean up this mess so we can function tomorrow. You can white knuckle your way through one bad night, but over time, poor sleep means trying to do an emotional regulation with a fried circuit board. It's really a lot more difficult. Rest is not the reward that you earn. It's basic maintenance. It's like docking your ship so you can clean off the barnacles. You can patch the sails and pump out the bilge before the next storm. So imagine this: it's late. The house is finally quiet. Your body is putting out all the I'm done signals. You have heavy eyes and slower thoughts, that slight ache behind your forehead. But your brain is still pacing, scanning the horizon for one more thing to worry about, one more notification to check, perhaps one more episode to start. In attachment language, your nervous system has been on watch all day. It's been your lookout, eyes on every possible storm. That can be emails or kids or partners, money, news, the one thing that you said in a meeting 3 days ago. Sleep, from your brain's point of view, isn't just closing your eyes, it's handing over the wheel. It's turning the ship towards the harbor and saying, we're done sailing for today. And if your history has taught you that storms can hit without warning, or that you only matter when you're producing, that kind of a surrender can feel dangerous. So today, instead of trying to bully yourself into sleep, like, I have to fall asleep, I'm useless if I don't get some sleep, I want you to walk through a tiny experiment in giving your nervous system explicit permission to reset. Think of it as a short before bed check in with the crew. If you're listening to this in bed, you can do this with your eyes open or closed. If you're not in bed, just file this away and use it later tonight. First, notice 3 signs that your body is actually tired. It might be a heaviness in your eyelids. It might be unstoppable yawning. It could be that your brain is just fuzzy and thinking is hard. Whatever they are, I just want you to name them. You're not making anything happen yet. You're just acknowledging what your body is telling you. You're just acknowledging that that's already true. Now, if it's comfortable, place a hand somewhere on your body that feels neutral or grounding. Could be your chest, could be your stomach, your arm. Just feel the warmth, feel the pressure of your hand. Let your attention rest there for a minute. You don't have to force your breath to be perfect. Just notice one inhale, one exhale, and then another, and do that repeatedly. You don't have to earn rest. Your body is already paying the price. See how that lands when you go through this. See how you feel when you try this. You don't have to agree with it 100%. Just let the words pass through and notice if anything shifts, even a little bit. Now, bring to mind the image of your day as a long sail. Maybe it was stormy. Maybe there was a lot of conflict. I don't know. Did you have deadlines? Were your kids throwing a fit, having tantrums? Maybe your day was just dull, is flat. There was no wind, just scrolling to pass the time. Either way, you've been out in the open waters for all day. So picture your ship, or in this metaphor, your body is your ship. Turn slowly towards the harbor. The lights of the docks are soft. The water is calmer here. You can hear faint noises from the shore, but they're background now, not alarms. If you picture that, gently tell yourself, for tonight, it's safe enough to tie up. I can come off of watch. If your brain instantly argues, no, it's not safe, we have too much to do, what about that email? It's okay. That's part of what you've been pacing the deck for years. You don't have to fight it, just acknowledge it. I hear you. You kept me going today. Thank you for that. For the next few hours, though, I'm going to let the body do its repair work, and you can pick up your overthinking tomorrow. Let your breath match the idea of coming into harbor. On that next inhale, imagine drawing in the last bits of energy you need to dock. On the exhale, feel a tiny release in your jaw or in your shoulders, wherever you carry your stress. Maybe it's in your belly. As you're setting down a coil of rope you've been carrying throughout the day, allow yourself to just relax just a little bit more. We're going to do 3 of those together. Inhale, notice what's going on in your body. Exhale, set down one of the things you've been carrying all day. Again, inhale, notice what's happening in your body. Exhale, set another thing down. One more time. Inhale, noticing your body. What's going on? Is there tension? Is there stress? Exhale, put down another thing you've been carrying all day. You don't have to feel sleepy enough. You don't have to silence every thought. The goal of this tiny practice is not to get perfect sleep. It's just changing the tone between you and your nervous system just by a little bit. It's turning it from fight to thank you. I'm going to stand down now. As you move towards the turning off the light, you might simply just add, tonight, I'm going to give myself permission to reset. I'll be here in the morning. We can keep going then, but tonight I need to rest. And whatever happens next, whether you drift off quickly or your mind wanders for a while, just see if you can treat yourself the way you would treat a tired child on your ship. Less punishment and more gentle guidance back towards the bunk. Over time, that's what teaches your lookout that it's actually okay to sleep when the ship is in harbor. Picture this. It's past midnight. Your alarm is set for a time that already feels pretty cruel, and your whole body is begging you to shut down. Your eyes burn, your shoulders ache, your thoughts are starting to slur around the edges. And yet there you are, numb, still scrolling, just one more video, one more level, one more episode, one more season on Netflix. You can feel tomorrow's exhaustion creeping in, but you keep going anyway. It's like some part of you has grabbed the wheel and is steering in the exact opposite direction of what you need. That part of you is not stupid and it's not broken. It is your threat system trying, no matter how clumsily, to protect the things it believes are more urgent than sleep. All day, you might have belonged to someone else, to everyone else, your boss, your kids, your partner, your never ending inbox or to do list. By the time the sun goes down, your nervous system is hoarse from shouting, "What about me?" So when the clock hits 11 or 12 and you finally get that sliver of unstructured time, your brain plants a flag and it says, "This is mine. I know we're tired, but this is the only moment I feel free." Staying up becomes a quiet act of revenge, not against you, but against a life that doesn't leave much room for you. For some people, it's not about freedom, it's about avoidance. The second the lights dim and the noise dies down, the thoughts you've outrun all day start walking up the stairs. Maybe it's grief you haven't dealt with, or anxiety about money, debts, bills. These are things we all stress about. Maybe it's the echo of an argument. Maybe it's just old memories that you can't not see and replay in your head. Your brain has learned that silence is when the ghosts come out. So it does what it can. It keeps the lights on. It offers you endless scroll or background shows, anything to drown out the noise inside your head. From the outside, it looks like I'm bad at going to bed. On the inside, it's if I keep moving, I don't have to be alone with those things that bother me. For others, the fight with sleep comes from an even older place. If you grew up in chaos, doors slamming at night and footsteps that you don't know how to read, sirens outside, someone is coming home drunk, your body may have learned that the dark hours are when danger happens. Even years later, in a safe room, your nervous system doesn't fully believe the danger is over. It keeps you a few notches more alert than you need to be. Your heart doesn't quite settle. Your mind keeps checking the emotional horizon. Are we sure everything's okay? Lying in bed feels less like resting and more like waiting for another shoe to drop. That layered on top of all that is a very modern superstition that your worth is measured in output. Maybe you were praised for being the reliable one or the hard worker, the person who never stops. Maybe you quietly believe that resting is something that you have to earn by doing enough or by being enough. So when bedtime comes and you haven't crossed off the entire list, shame can slip in beside you and it whispers, "You didn't do enough today. You don't deserve to shut down yet." Suddenly, you're answering one more email, cleaning one more corner of the kitchen, or planning tomorrow in obsessive detail, as if punishing yourself with less sleep will somehow make you a better person. From the outside, all of this just looks like stubbornness. Why don't you just go to bed? Inside, the nervous system is trying to juggle impossible priorities: freedom, safety, avoidance of pain, the drive to be good enough. Sleep becomes the thing that has to wait over and over, even though it's the very thing that would make all those priorities easier to handle. The invitation here isn't to bully that part of your brain into submission, but to understand it, to see that when you're lying in bed, exhausted and still reaching for your phone, it's not because you're weak. It's because some younger, scared, or overworked part of you believes that staying awake is the only way to stay safe or to stay worthy or in control. Once you can see that, you can start making more gentle deals with yourself. I hear you. You want one more hour of freedom, one more layer of distraction, one more task checked off. What we trade 30 minutes of that for 30 minutes of actual rest. So we're not fighting the same battle tomorrow with a half a battery. And that's the paradox at the center of this. The very part of your brain that keeps you up for your own good, quote unquote, is the part that most needs you to sleep. Your job isn't to declare war on it. It's slowly to convince it that you'll still be here, still fighting for your needs and your safety after you've turned out the lights. Think about bedtime as the moment when all the noise quiets down and your system finally has the stage to itself. All day you have distractions, emails, errands, kids, background chatter. Your nervous system is busy just surviving. But when the lights go off and it's just you, the pillow and your thoughts, the way you've learned to do closeness or to avoid it, this all starts to show up in very sharp relief. Now, if you lean towards an anxious attachment, bedtime can feel like standing on the edge of a cliff with no railing. The room might be dark, but your mind is lit up like a control panel. Where is she? Why hasn't he texted back? Did I sound weird on that call? You check your phone one more time, then again 5 minutes later, as if a new message could magically reach back through time and fix your day. If your partner is in bed with you, but turned away, you might start reading every shift of their body as a sign. Are they mad? Are they bored? Are they slipping away? Underneath the checking is a quiet plea. Can I hold on to you while I fall asleep? Will you still be here when I wake up? The bed becomes less a place of rest and more a stage where you're watching for any hint of abandonment. Sometimes that turns into reaching extra texts or late night conversations, maybe even nudging your partner just for some reassurance. Sometimes it turns into protest, picking a fight or going cold, saying never mind when what you really mean is please don't leave me alone with this feeling. If you lean avoidant, bedtime often looks calmer from the outside and lonelier on the inside. You might stay up late just to get a few more things done, answering emails, scrolling, or sinking into a show until your eyes sting. There's a quiet pride in it. I don't need much sleep. I can push through. I'm fine. Sharing a bed, if you have a partner, can feel like crowding on a life raft. Too much heat, too much breath, too much expectation. You create an angle or angle yourself toward the edge of the mattress, maybe with a pillow barrier. You turn out the light quickly, you keep your thoughts to yourself, and you tell them, look, I'm just tired. And when they reach for you, part of you might actually want to roll in and tangle up and say, today was hard. Can you stay close? But the moment you imagine that level of dependence, something in your chest tightens. Sleep becomes a way to disappear safely. If I'm out, I don't have to talk about it. I don't need anything. If you lived with a disorganized or fearful avoidant patterns, bedtime can feel like whiplash. One night you might cling to your partner like they're just the last piece of driftwood on the ocean, talking late or oversharing, wanting to come as close as humanly possible. The next night, the same closeness feels suffocating. You roll away, snap at them for breathing too loud, or suddenly insist on sleeping on the couch. Alone in the same push pull, it's just internal. You might crawl into bed longing for comfort, replaying the fantasies of being held, and then the second you imagine someone actually seeing all of you, your fears, your history, your panic, you feel exposed and it can feel wrong. The bed that could be the nest turns into a spotlight. Your body doesn't know whether to reach for connection or to run for the door, so it does both. Falling asleep on someone's chest one week, abruptly shutting them out the next. You can text, I need you, at midnight and then ignore the reply in the morning. Secure attachment doesn't make bedtime perfect, It just makes it less of a battleground. In a secure pattern, the bed is mostly what it's supposed to be, a place to rest, alone or together. If your partner is out late, you might miss them. You might notice a pinch of worry and still trust that they'll check in. They'll roll away to get comfortable. You don't automatically translate that into rejection. You can say, I'm feeling a little off. Can we cuddle? Without bracing for shame. And you can say, look, I need some space to sleep without fearing that it will be taken as a threat. Inside a secure system, the story sounds more like, I'm allowed to be tired. I'm allowed to need. I'm allowed to be a separate entity. Bedtime is when you can let your guard down, not because nothing bad will ever happen, but because you've had enough experiences of rupture and repair to trust that most of the time, you and the people you care about will find your way back. Attachment at bedtime is really about this. When the distractions drop away, what does your nervous system believe about being alone, being close, or being safe? Do you lie there trying to earn love one more text at a time? Do you armor up with independence and treat sleep like a solo mission? Do you surge forward and slam on the brakes so fast that you make yourself dizzy? You don't have to fix any of that in one night, but you can start to notice it. Maybe tonight, as you crawl into bed, ask yourself one gentle question. If my behavior here is my attachment systems talking, what is it trying to say? And if you can translate even a little bit of that, maybe I'm scared to be alone. Maybe I'm scared that I'll disappear if I let you in. Maybe I'm scared love will hurt me again. You're already doing something different if you do these, if you acknowledge these. You're not just acting out a pattern, you're beginning to hold it. Imagine your brain as a small, overworked library that never closes. All day long, people are shoving books through the door. Conversations, emails, sensations, fights, compliments, tiny embarrassments, big griefs. The librarian, your brain, your nervous system, it grabs each one and it mutters, I'll deal with this later. And it just stacks it on the counter. By evening, the pile is teetering. Those books are about what your coworker said, the look on your partner's face, the bill you're avoiding, the memory that just got triggered at the grocery store. You don't have time to read any of them. You're just trying to keep the doors open. Well, sleep is the only time the library actually locks its front door. When you finally drift off, the librarian will flip the sign to closed, sigh, and start shelving some of the books. Some books get tossed. Random junk you don't need. Some get carefully filed, cross-referenced, and labeled. This goes with old memories of feeling left out. This belongs to minor annoyances section. This is not the end of the world. Emotional moments from the day get rerun with the volume turned down. A conversation that felt huge at 9 p.m. becomes something that you can see in context by 9 a.m. That memory consolidation and emotional processing, your brain quietly putting yesterday where it belongs so today doesn't have to carry all of it raw. But when you cut sleep short, you're asking that librarian to throw the doors back open halfway through the job. The piles stay on the counter. The intense thing that your friend said, the shame from your mistake at work or fearing about money, they don't get filed. They just sit there buzzing in the way. The alarm system in the back of the library, the amygdala, the part of your brain that's always watching for danger, it gets twitchy. It sees chaos and thinks we're not okay. There's too much. Something bad is happening. It turns up the volume on every little thing. At the same time, the head librarian, who usually keeps everyone calm, the prefrontal cortex, your wise mind or long view part, it's running on fumes. She's the one who normally says, hey, check the facts. Take a breath. This isn't as catastrophic as it feels. Or maybe don't send that text right now. Without sleep, she's half asleep herself, shuffling around, struggling to keep up. The alarms are going off, and instead of calmly checking the building, she startles. She drops a clipboard and she yells along with them. That's what chronic short sleep does to your emotional life. The alarm system gets louder and the calming system gets weaker. So the next day, someone is 5 minutes late and your body reacts like it's been abandoned. A mildly critical email feels like a full-blown attack. Traffic makes you want to scream or cry. You know, somewhere in your mind that you're overreacting. But the gap between knowing and being able to do something different, that's getting bigger. This is where skills run into trouble. Skills like checking the facts or practicing opposite action riding the wave, or dropping into your wise mind all assume that you have at least a little bit of bandwidth left. They rely on that tired librarian being awake enough to say, hold on, let's grab tight and let's get the right tool off the shelf. On 4 hours of sleep, it's more like this. The emotion hits, the alarm blares, and before the librarian can even look or self soothe, someone has already pulled the fire alarm and everyone's running for the exits. You go straight to your oldest habits: snapping, shutting down, maybe over texting or scrolling, self harm, even whatever your nervous system has learned. Because those live in the basement vault of your brain. That's where the alarms are, not up in the careful rows of skill manuals. It's not that you don't know your skills, it's that you're trying to use them in a building that never got cleaned overnight. It never got reorganized and cataloged and put away. So when we say sleep is your nervous system's reset button, it's not just poetic fluff. It's literally the time when your brain takes yesterday's chaos off the front counter. It turns some emotional sirens down so they become memories instead of active threats. It can refuel the part of you that can pause and choose and speak calmly and rationally instead of from pure panic and shutdown. You can white knuckle your way through a rough patch with very little sleep for a while. Most of us have experience with that. But every night is just one more episode, just one more scroll, just one more email. You are effectively sending your nervous system into each new day with a cluttered library, a jumpy alarm system, and a half-conscious librarian. In that state, your skills aren't gone. They're just buried under a pile. Treating sleep like a non-negotiable emotional hygiene isn't about perfection or 8 hours of sleep every night. It's about recognizing that when you're tired, you're struggling to regulate, doesn't mean that you're failing therapy or not trying hard enough. It means you're asking your brain to do delicate emotional surgery while your hands are shaking and you're in the dark. Sometimes the most skillful move you can make for your mental health isn't another worksheet. It's closing the library, dimming the lights, and letting the overnight crew do their quiet, invisible work. So tomorrow you have a fighting chance. So if you've been sailing with me through this episode, here's what I want you to take from our little brain as a library journey. All day long, your mind has been that tiny, overworked library with the door propped open, people and problems shoving books at you, conversations, arguments, worries, tiny joys, old triggers. You don't have time to sort any of it. You just keep stacking it on the counter and telling yourself, I will deal with this later. Sleep is the only opportunity that your library actually closes. So when you finally allow yourself to drift off, the night crew comes in, your nervous system shuts the doors, turns the signs to closed, and starts putting things where they belong. Some junk gets tossed, the important pieces get filed, so they stop buzzing on the surface of your mind. The alarm system in the back room settles down, and that part of you that can think clearly and use your skills actually gets a chance to settle down and recharge. When you constantly cut that process short, one or more episode or one or more scrolls, one more chore, you're sending yourself into the next day with your doors half open and the alarms already warmed up. The librarian is just running on fumes and regret. Of course, everything feels bigger. Of course, you snap a lot easier. You shut down quicker. You can reach for old survival habits, those instinctual behaviors, even when you know other skills might be better. It's not that you're bad. It's not that you're doomed in your attachment patterns. It's that you're trying to do this delicate emotional work in a library that was never allowed to organize and process. So when you notice yourself fighting sleep and you don't want to go to straight to I'm so bad at this. I want you to remember that what looks like self-sabotage is often a tired or scared part of yourself trying to protect something. Your sense of freedom, your fear of being alone with your thoughts, or your old belief that you have to keep going or everything will fall apart. And then instead of declaring war on that part, maybe you make a tiny deal with it. Not that I will suddenly become an 8 hour asleep a night superhero, but tonight I will allow my library to close just a little earlier, give myself a slightly better chance to have a calmer alarm system and a more awake inner librarian tomorrow. You don't have to earn that. You are allowed to have a brain that needs rest. You're allowed to make an emotional life a little easier by letting the doors close. So, in this episode of The Pirate Therapist, we've embarked on a nighttime voyage to understand sleep as more than just downtime. It's an essential reset for your weary nervous system. The moment your overworked inner librarian finally locks the doors so it can sort the chaos of the day. We start with the brutal reality of lying awake, exhausted yet wired, as your brain fights rest with late night scrolling and racing thoughts. Through vivid vignettes, we see how attachment styles can haunt bedtime. The anxious listener checking their phone and abandoning abandonment signals, the avoidant one angling away from intimacy, and the disorganized swinging wildly between clinging and fleeing, and the rare secure soul who can simply just rest without an alarm. Diving into accessible science, we picture the brain as a library where sleep files emotional books, quiets the amygdala's alarms, and recharges the prefrontal cortex's regulation, making skills like distress tolerance and wise mind far harder to access when you're running on fumes. Chronic sleep loss doesn't just tire you, it amplifies reactivity. It erodes your impulse control and turns molehills into emotional mountains. Narratives reveal why we resist revenge, bedtime, procrastination, stealing me time, fear of unprocessed thoughts in the quiet, hypervigilance, perhaps over old trauma, and shame fueled hustle that treats rest as a luxury. We reframe it all with compassion. No shaming your midnight mutiny, just gentle deals like closing the library perhaps 15 minutes early or jotting three emotional hits before bed. I invite you to notice your tiredness. Breathe gently into that harbor and whisper permission to your lookout. It is safe enough to stand down tonight. We close this episode by urging a small experiment over perfection. Treat sleep as an emotional first aid, not a moral test. So you wake with a calmer alarm, a clearer mindset, and a fighting chance to use the skills that you probably already know. So as we tie up the dock for tonight, I hope you're carrying one quiet shift. Sleep isn't a luxury that you failed to earn or a test that you have to ace. It's the harbor where your overworked nervous system finally locks the doors, shelves the day's chaos, and gives your mind a chance to wake up early and ready for tomorrow's storms. Whether you saw yourself pacing the deck at midnight, fighting for me time, or bracing against the quiet, give that part of you a nod of thanks for trying so hard to keep you safe. Then invite it gently to go ahead and stand down. Your only job is not perfection, it's one small experiment. Maybe 15 minutes earlier to lights out, or just write down three things that are weighing on you. Just acknowledge them, or perhaps whisper to your inner lookout, it's safe enough tonight. These small deposits in an emotional bank will add up. Thank you for sailing these waters with me today on The Pirate Therapist. I'm Lee Perry. Until next time, may you find harbors where rest feels like a mercy instead of a surrender, skills that land more easily when your library's in order, and enough kindness for the tired parts of you still scanning the horizon. I wish you fair winds and good weather. So until next week, when we pull back into port for another episode, have a wonderful week. I wish you good rest.